Okay, welcome to June Gem number 8. This is going to be titled Simple Workflow Debugging. Now, this is not for the experts. This is not for the techies or the SharePoint admins or anybody like that. This is really targeted towards somebody who's building out their first index workflow. What they can look at if they're stuck on something. Where can they go in the designer? Where can they go in the SharePoint environment to figure out what's actually causing this particular issue without actually having to have admin rights or you looking at SharePoint logs and things like that. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll actually jump into the workflow designer. And I'm going to point out a few things that you can look at. Now, first of all, whenever you're building out a workflow, if it's going down a particular path or it's not doing something you expect it to do, right, there's usually some type of logic error in the workflow design. So you want to do a little bit of debugging from the design stage to see what that could be. Now, I'm going to actually add a couple of little things in here. So let me pause this for 1 sec. I'm going to build that little workflow so I don't bore you guys, and then show you how you can kind of debug it. Okay, through the magic of Hollywood, we are back and we have a workflow. Now, what we do, I'll tell you exactly what this is doing. First of all, I created 3 variables, left operand, right operand, and total. I'm using 2 set variable actions. This will actually set the values. So this actually, show you that one. Put your mouse over it. You can see it's setting it to left to equal 2 and right to equal 4. This math operation is doing a left plus a right, so it should be 2 plus 4, and the num total should equal 6. Okay. Now, if you have a look down here, we have a conditional action. This action checks whether the total is greater than 6. If it's greater than 6, we're going to update the title to whatever the total is greater than 6. And if it's not greater than 6, then we're going to set it to num total is less than or equal to 6. Okay, all right. Now we've published this workflow. I'm going to run this and see what happens. See if this works, right? It's doing calculations, so you would think it should go down the left branch saying that it is less than or equal to 6 because it equals to 6. All right, we start it, give it a second. When this workflow finishes, we'll have a look at what the results are. There you go. 6 is greater than 6. So obviously that's not right. Let's have a look at the workflow history. So this is one of the first things to look at. Right? You can see that is happening right there. So let's see where it went down the workflow. There's my simple debugging workflow that ran. So I should go back and explain what I just did. I clicked on the ellipsis here and clicked on View Workflow History. Clicked on the simple debugging workflow that I just ran. Now you can see it has gone down this central branch, and then our value, our total, is equal to 6. Is it greater than 6? No, it's not. It's less than or equal to. So it really should go down this branch. So you can tell there's something going on, something amiss right here. Now it's actually quite easy to tell with this particular workflow, but in some cases it won't be that easy. If you put your mouse over this, you'll actually see I configured it incorrectly. I said variable num total is greater than 5, right? So this is an easy one to fix because if I go back to my workflow designer, where I thought we're comparing it to greater than 6, I'm actually did a typo and I put in 5. So let's change that to 6. Click on save, publish. We'll be able to rerun this workflow. And hopefully that will let us know the actual value is correct. All right, that's that done. Back here, let's rerun it. Let's actually rerun it on the second item. Okay, started. Now, hopefully this updates the title field. There you go. Our value is 6. 6 is less than or equal to 6, which is correct. Right? So that was a simple way to debug it by actually looking at the workflow history and having a look where the actual workflow went. right? Very easy to actually tell by these green actions that it came down here and then it went down this left branch. So that's the quick and easy way of debugging it. The only reason that this works when I put my mouse over it is because I hard-coded the value 6. If I actually compare it to another variable, then of course that makes it a little bit harder to debug. So how do we debug something like that? All right, we'll jump back here and let's actually create a variable and we'll just call it num6. And again, we'll make it a 5, right? Okay. And so of course here, we're going to not compare to a value, we're going to compare to a variable. Done. Publish it. And when it's done, we'll run it again and it will fail. Or will not fail, but it will go down an unexpected branch of the workflow. So this time we'll do item number 3, start. Again, as I mentioned in a previous gem, usually these types of workflows will run automatically, but we're just manually running it to test these out. And you can see we've got 6 is greater than 6, so that's incorrect. Again, if we look at the workflow history and you put your mouse over this, now you can't tell. Now you're comparing a variable called numTotal to another variable called num6. So obviously something is causing that num6 to be incorrect. So what I would do in this case is actually look at both the numTotal and the num6 just to get an idea, right? So before we get to here, we can actually say use a log in the history list action. Oops. Now what I generally do is actually type in the name of the variable and num6, and then I actually insert the variables themselves. numTotal and num6. Okay, right, simple log action. This will write to the workflow history and we'll see if what we're actually comparing is incorrect. Okay, there's that done. Let's create a new item. We'll call it test4. Save. And then we'll manually run that simple debugging workflow again. Now we're still going to get this to fail because we haven't really fixed the workflow. All we've done is add an action in there to maybe help us try to debug what's going on. All right, there you go. That is incorrect. Now we click on this workflow history and you can see my numTotal is 6 and my num6 variable is actually 5. So now I know that I need to go back through my workflow and figure out what is setting that num6 variable, because obviously that's causing our workflow to go down the wrong path. Now, of course, in this case, we're just setting it in here, but at least this gives you an idea of what you need to do to debug that particular scenario. Okay, now I'm going to do one more, which is a little bit more complex. Let's do a call web service action. Now I'm not going to fully configure this, but what a call web service action does, or maybe a query XML action, something like that, it will return a lot of data. In this case, we do want some sort of query and we're going to get back a whole bunch of data. Usually it's in a text variable. And usually when you call a web service, you will get back a bunch of XML, and it makes it a little bit harder to pull out the data that you want because you don't necessarily know the structure of that XML. So what I'd recommend is let's create a variable here. We'll call it text web service data. Okay, so you simply pick that as the store results in. Okay, now you have a whole bunch of XML. What are you going to do with it? If you use this log in the history list action, it will only log around about 127 characters, right? So it's going to maybe, or most likely, cut off a whole bunch of your XML. So what I recommend in this case, to help you figure out what the structure is so you can pull out the data that you need, is you actually use a send notification action. Now, send notification allows you to send an email. or a link message or something like that. In this case will be an email. And what you do is you click on this little browse button, go into the lookup, and you select your initiator. Right? This is strictly for debugging. In here, you might say web service XML data. I'd leave nothing in the body. I also don't put the XML directly in the body because some mail clients actually strip that out. So instead, click on add attachment and you say new file and you can say web service.txt. I do txt so that my XML opens up in Notepad rather than some sort of XML editor. For the content, click on insert reference, go over here to workflow variables. There's my text web service data and save. That's it. Click on save, click on publish, run the workflow, and you will find that shortly you would get an email with an XML file attached or a text file attached, which you can open up and you can actually see the structure of it. Now, this really helps when you do things like the query XML action, right? So you need to pull data out of that XML. This action actually lets you do that. But before you can actually do that, you need to know how to build up that XPath expression to pull the data out. And in that case, you actually need to understand the structure of that XML response that you've received. So those are the couple of main ways of debugging a particular workflow without actually having to get SharePoint admins and SharePoint log files and verbose logging and all sorts of craziness to figure out what's going on. Now, those definitely help, but for some quick, simple debugging, this is really the way to go. Hopefully you learned something and look forward to another June Gem shortly.